I would like to thank the organizer to invite me and get this opportunity to share with you some ideas about technology, because my paper will focus mainly on technology and translation. I don't claim that a lot of things will be new for you, but maybe put together, maybe you will realize we are really in a deep change in translation and translation studies. All right, I will read my paper, otherwise we are here after 2 hours or maybe 3 hours. Oops, does not change? Yeah, but okay. Reactions to globalization very much, with no stop information, viral rumors, overuse of emotions, abusive financial flows, religious fanaticism. It's not easy today to have clear landmarks. .com, .biz, .net, they are homeless, ruthless, heartless. They just do business. Since the internet took center stage in the field of communication in the late 20th century, the network has taken over all the messages concerning communication, sublimating them into a single mythology. In few years, we moved from the New World Order in communication that prevailed from the late 70s to the World Summit on the Information Society and the European Knowledge Society, raising questions on the social and economic impact of digital technology. If we want to understand the new balance of powers, the new form of oppressions and commoditization, and the new means of freedom, we need to move away from the rocky shores of myth and technophobia. My presentation will follow a three-step move, and I shall use translation to illustrate and justify some of my arguments. Messianism appears to be inherent to the history of the prophets of communication. Each successive step in our mastery of times and space has seen a revamping of the promise of a society whose members will be more mutually supportive, that will be more transparent, more free, more egalitarian, and more prosperous. For example, in 1849, Victor Hugo prophesied, and I quote, "the electric wire of concord which will encompass the globe," unquote. Jack London, prior to the First World War, celebrated films, and I quote, "the messenger of universal education bringing together the peoples of the world," unquote. The end of the 20th century did not eschew the spirit of messianism. Today, it is true, information and communication technology is so omnipresent and so invisible, except when it breaks down, that we almost forget its effect. Like the fingers on our hand, we are never very conscious of using them, and yet they have transformed our attitudes, our brain, our relationship with objects, relationships with nature. It is only when they are injured or amputated that we are aware of the multitude of functions they have. My presentation is based on some persistent questions. To begin with, the world continues to fragment, even though we talk about globalization. We know it's always over countries that must open their borders, never our own country. There are those who talk glibly of deterritorialization, of the end of history, the end of ideology, the end of the state, and even the end of translation as we know it. But all the events of recent years contradict these proclaimed ends. Some praise the new economy, the new information society, the new technology to the skies. But others, and sometimes the same people, make war for oil and gas, products that are not susceptible of being virtualized or deterritorialized. In Japan, groups of people pray in front of their laptops to ward off computer viruses, while others sell talisman, Shinto, against those same virus. We were made believe that electronics will facilitate the production, storage, archiving, and distribution of all sorts of documents. But we were not told about compatibility problems, about the voracity of the market that seeks to render 3-year-old computers and software obsolete. The Internet is an immense sound of chamber for combating state oppression, for example, in China, but it is also subject to the imperative of security and surveillance. We may speak of globalization in at least 6 different, not entirely unconnected senses. 1, as a straightforward internationalization of exchange, commercials among others, and that's not new. 2, as a stage in neoliberal economics development with McDonaldization as its caricatural extreme. 3, as an impetus towards regional integration within Europe, between the Americas, in Southeast Asia, in such impelled more by a desire to promote free trade than by a particular political vision. 4, as a strategy for managing the entire common human heritage, culture, education, health, environment, water, and so on. 5, as a network woven by ICT, facilitating the interplay between global and local, and with implication for the organization of work, community life, production, distribution, services, information, and so on. And 6, as a principal consequence of anthropogenic climate change, humans affecting all life on the planet. In this process, geographical space will extend to the whole planet. Time should shrink to the last stock market session, to the instantaneity of the click of the mouse or button of a mobile phone. This ignores the fact that the digital divide is not an utopia. Less than 25% of the world population represent around 90% of Internet users. Immediacy agglomerates data, information, and knowledge. It hampers culture, memory, relationship, knowledge that demands distance, a step back. The dictatorship of time follows time demands and priority. In such a universe, incentive and indication to stimulate activity and real social existence, free time becomes time lost. The very things that should free us from repetitive tasks enslave us. Weary of this non-time, where nothing happens, we come to prefer games of chance, video games, telephone calls, and our SMS, in order to kill times and reintroduce expectation-defined times. Anything rather than nothing when there is nothing to do. In such a context of dependency, pretense, and simulation, the infantile fantasy of omnipotence, to obtain knowledge, a contact, one has only to press a button, comes against distance, not longer geographical distance, but cultural distance. Technical proximity does not eliminate cultural distance. Relationship, identity, history are never mute, and they disrupt, even contradict, attempts to internationalize, to homogenize, as well as attempts to construct and maintain linguistic hegemony. How in the future are we to perceive the role and position of translation and translators? We translate for the globalization of certain goods, certificates, finance, software, for telecommunication, for the pharmaceutical and biotechnology industry, for cultural industry, and also for the protection of the child against environmental pollution, for safety regulation at the workplace. We interpret for the policeman expelling the foreigner, and for the refugee seeking asylum, for diplomats, but also for xenophobes. We increase productivity, the speed of production of text, but we localize too to take into account differences and local nuances, even though some dream of universal lingua franca. In order to understand the complexity of social and symbolic practice with their new forms of oppressions and alienation, we must contextualize both what is at stake and our action, and not be content with technological discourse alone. The equation is often made between translation and communication. We might add that translation is also transmission or distribution via one or more media, paper, CD-ROM, DVD, the web, and so on, and that these media are themselves defined and actualized by means of social organization. All production, reception, dissemination, archiving of translation is at the same time socialized and physical, even though the text may be immaterial in virtual space. The same is true of any statement within an organized sociocultural context. This transmission in time, even reduced to the instant, and space, influence influence that which is communicated. Every change of position or context entails a modification of sense, if not form. ICT does not act as a neutral vehicle for our communication, whether they are monolingual or multilingual, local or international. This technology implies fluidity, that is to say, at one and the same time, the flow of data, flexibility of transportation, finances, working conditions. Omniscient it may be, the Internet does not remember what is said yesterday. It is a flow of data, an amnesiac river. Up to now, our patrimony was constructed patiently, collecting and preserving material media. The characteristic of the web present many obstacles to the construction of a digital memory. The Internet is unstable. Certainly, the constant evolution of software, coding standards, and application nourish the vitality of the network, but it also impairs its conservation. It's not sure that present-day contents will be legible in 10 years' time. The Internet is immense. The number of sites is increasing, but we must not be duped. The Internet can offer only the data capable of being detected by the few search engines available. We know that the most relevant pages are those that are more frequently cited. From now on, an item of information or an opinion counts not for what it contributes or explains, but because it is passed from site to site and is detected by the mathematical criteria of the search engines. Economy of memory is defeated by the digitization of the materials put on the net. What do we find on the net? We find data, information, interlinked by an hazardous process of navigation. The superabundance of such data also leads to amnesia. Selective data and information are evidently linked to a short-term economy, to the cultural industry, the media industry, while systematic information and knowledge are matters of distance and duration. During the 19th century, the crowd was the prevailing image, inspiring fears that left a strong mark on the idea of political communication. The early 20th century, however, saw the crowd image shift to that of the public. Crowds became scattered into a multitude of individuals who were physically separate but mentally connected. The atomization of the crowd paved the way for the advent of public opinion. Today, the development of ICT offers new opportunities for crowd together and take the public sphere in different ways. Flash mobs, mega drinks party, movements like Indignados or the Arab Spring. Translation, taken as is in its traditional sense, has been denied in several aspects all at once. All languages and societies have not been affected in the same way, to the same degree, at the same time. For a long time, it seems as if translation only served the powers and the established authority, royal or religious, as if they were inexistent exchange of all type, I mean commercial, scientific, and philosophical exchange, to name a few. Denial has always been present, and still is, with regards to translation as an activity requiring effort. Many sponsors, amateurs, self-translators, I mean scholars translating their own articles, engineers within the language industry, continue to consider translation as a mechanical process, replacement of one word by another, a problem of dictionaries, something they could do themselves if they had the time, but which they refer to, and they which prefer which they prefer to pass on to a cousin who knows languages, or to a bilingual secretary, or worse, to a professional translator, on the condition that he or she does not demand too much financial compensation. Perceiving a text to be translated as nothing more than a linear series of words or phrases, no doubts explain why translation has long been considered as inferior, subordinate, second only to the original. And we are all familiar with the recurring diatribes on lost in translation, as if translators could only hope to level out, neutralize, in their desperate effort to find equivalence in what could only be an affair of words, without stakes and without cultural complexity. Denial has likewise been present with regard to translation as a profession, notably by translators themselves, who have integrated, incorporated, and internalized various aspects of the subaltern in their work. Metaphors of translation and images of the translators in the collective imagination are today regularly reproduced in fictions, novels, films, even in the media. They verge on the stereotypical and on cliché, with the translator viewed more often as a hard-working hermit on the margins, an imposter instead of a mediator, an expert, a creator. Finally, denial has long been present with regard to translation as a discipline. Even today, the status of translation studies remain an ambiguous one within university institutions, both between languages and literature. Such ambiguity reflects the malaise of universities when confronted with interdisciplinarity, intercultural communication, and linguistic diversity, even when at this very moment the globalization of business and trade and migration continuously hurl challenges out at most of our societies. The types of denial mentioned die hard. Will they resist the transformations currently underway and which make the translator an ever more dematerialized individual? Computer-assisted translation tools and machine translation have revolutionized and continue to do so the practice of translation, and they are altering both the perception of translation among users and the conceptualization of translation among producers and scholars. For the general user, automatic translation programs, whether online or on smartphone, give the impression that translation is an instantaneous activity. The quality they achieve can be quite high, depending on genre convention and language proximity. The rise of CAT tools is fascinating. They have provided a real shift in the analysis of language because it's now feasible to calculate statistically the probability of occurrence of specific lexical items in specific genre and, in the case of translation in certain language pair, to suggest or provide translation segments matching source language items. This does not mean that creativity is totally discounted. Legitimate translation variation is one area of interest in machine translation research. For instance, while a human translator working with a CAT tool can always challenge the suggested translation equivalent. In addition to machine translation, one of the buzzwords today in translation is crowdsourcing. Oops. Oh. But let me put this in a larger context. We have now moved to a kind of dematerialized computing, cloud computing, which lifts from the translator's shoulders all the worries and burdens of management, maintenance, and reconfiguration of work tools. These new online distribution models of shared tools push the translator to become member of an international virtual and collaborative community, since the updates and new versions are immediately available. This rapid evolution has, of course, an impact on the different practice of translation, on the organization of those practices, and surely on their supply. Shared resources accessible in real time are now dynamic. Costs are reduced, management is shortened, work is shared. Dematerializations favors simplification and productivity. We are again facing a new paradigm shift from translation as a professional service to translation as a utility embedded in every application and every screen. So far, that translation could become a basic right in the global information society. So what about crowdsourcing in a translation task offered up to an undefined group of amateurs? Cloud cannot be confused with crowd, but both are rapidly changing the landscape as well as big data and mobile. Collective translation is used, for example, in the localization of software, websites, or for translating articles, reports, literary text, and interview. It has aroused a great deal of concern in terms of the people involved. Are they translators? In terms of ethics, what are the implications of this freely provided work or unfair competition? In terms of quality, and in terms of the very concept of what translation is. For this collective, unpaid effort, volunteer and anonymous, or sometimes not, participants translate a sentence, a paragraph, a page, all of which can be retranslated and revised by others until the entire project is finished. Web page machine translation services render visible both the demand of translation and the translating process. These volunteers translate once or can translate hundreds of times thanks to such tools as Traduviki, Wikitranslate, or Google Translate. Social media or socio-digital networks, such as Facebook and Twitter, take advantage of the pacing craze in order to become more accessible to more people. Very often, crowdsourcing is assimilated to amateur translation, translation by fans, fan translation, fan subbing, fan dubbing, scan trans, who deliberately choose a manga, an animated film, a video game, and proceed to translate or to subtitle or to dub in order for others to know about it as soon as possible. These fans are not translation professionals. They transgress certain conventions and respective norms of the profession. Their creativity, nothing to do with the romantic cult of originality, has therefore colored the professional market and maybe even change expectations among viewers and their tolerance to inventions. On the other hand, the online translation or subtitling of, say, political text and speeches leaves open the possibility of manipulation and distortion, or simply error by a less than competent translator. How is a general user to detect this? Denied for so long, translation is now desirable, relatively easy done. However, an important issue must be raised with amateur work beyond breaching the legal obligation. In breaking the current process of broadcasting or the delay between the release in cinema theater and the distribution online, amateurs play the Trojan horse of capitalism in the cultural exception and the language diversity. What a paradox! They do a non-profit job, but act as capitalist actors, producing and distributing at the same time, not committed with local responsibility, offering only the market. I do not confuse crowdsourcing with collaborative translation. I mean teamwork that is carried out on the same single document by professionals. The traditional individualism of translators should not hide the fact that they have worked in pairs and in groups since at least the 16th century. This practice still continues, and I would like to give you two examples. The new 2001 Bible translation into French and the new 2007 translation of James Joyce Ulysses by a team of 7 translators meeting on a regular basis. Localization project implied also teams and a division of labor that is both physical and virtual. I do not confuse crowdsourcing with volunteer network translation that can also be carried out by professionals. That is to say, those who have been trained for translation or have some experience in translation. For example, through networks such as Babel, ECOS, Translators Without Borders. These activist translators are not remunerated. Their network is aligned with a specific social cause or activity, or allied with action expressing certain values. Whatever the case may be, a volunteer translating on the web can be a fan, an expert, an activist, either with experience or a formal background in translation or without it. He or she may even collaborate with a professional. This is not the case, however, for technology providers who do not stem from the same community as users. Google, Facebook make a profit and are on the stock exchange above and beyond performing as social media. The jury is still open as to how and to what extent this new practice might disqualify or deprofessionalize full-time translators who are trained and replete with experience. The evolution is not only technical, it's also economic and social. It is also textual. When thinking of crowdsourcing or collaborative translation done by an indefinite group of amateurs, one remark comes to mind. It calls into question a certain ideology which assumes that translation is always an individual act, focused on a written text, and takes the translator as a kind of substitute for the author. The tension between an individualistic and a collaborative approach to translation is not new, but we can observe that the former approach was dominant from the Renaissance to the end of the 20th century, with an apogee during the Romantic period when the writer was more and more idealized as a single figure. The later approach, collaborative, seems to be expanding through the use of translation memory system, cloud translation, fan sourcing, translation by web communities. In fact, and here comes my questions, why do we need a media history of translation? Practice of reading and writing have changed historically according to the material forms: human body, tablet, roll, codex, book, screen. The hardware of these materials, form, voice, clay, stone, and so on, always make a difference concerning how we can read and write and translate. We all, and I want to show you some pictures here to make you sure that you understand what I mean. In fact, translation studies do not care until today about the differences between the different age of the time, meaning that we consider Cicero in the same way as we consider Zola, for instance, thinking that all during that time people have used books, which is not the case. Cicero never translated books. And I think we have to consider that technology or the media used for translation affect the way we conceptualize translation. And I will prove today, later on, that we are now shifting from the book paradigm to a new digital culture paradigm. And then again, it means that we have to reconceptualize our in translation studies. So human skin, a tattoo. Here you have, this is not a joke. I mean, as you know, people like tattoos today, and there are many cases where people use Harry Potter, for instance, on their skin, in the back, in translation. So translation exists on the skin, in some people's case. I don't want to give names, but I know a professor in Paris who have a translation on his back. I don't have. Here a stone, and of course you can imagine when you have a stone like that, you cannot use the same concept in translation as a book. Because that's a scroll. You need three people to keep this in your hand. And again, here you have an example of a codex. You see, you have translation and comments at the same times. And then you have books. With printing in the 16th century, then it was possible to copy the same text again and again in 1,000 copies, meaning that in that case, we could develop the concept of equivalence because we have the same text in different copies. But not before. Codex has only one copy, not more than that. And today, with digital culture, I don't know what is a text. Where does it start? Where does it end? So, back to this. We all know how Luther used a powerful combination of print and translation, and how Google used a powerful combination of computer memory and calculation for machine translation. Through cultural history, we can easily follow the influence of media technology in painting, but we seldom pay attention to similar influence in translating. Today, we can see that, as in the past, several media cultures coexist. Paper and screen are struggling for the dominant position, just as individualistic and collaborative approach still overlap. Here we can refer to mediology as another inspiring source that is challenging the conventional idea that technology is not culture. Mediology seeks to understand how media technology is not only storing, but also directly unframing our thought, belief, and social organization. The history of the condition of reading, authorship, and publishing also shed lines on the relationship between oral and written codes. The overwhelming fact of human language has been its orality. However, our Western societies, with the invention of printing, has rejected orality studies. In translation studies, we still tend to focus exclusively on text, or rather on a certain concept of text, and neglect oral and or written translation of oral narrative and epics. Even in interpreting studies, long dominated by the paradigm of conference interpreting, the psychodynamics of orality has been under-evaluated. Orality and written form has never been homogeneous. You can speak spontaneously in a dialogue or a monologue, or by reciting, reading aloud what has been written. You can write in order to be read, to be spoken as if not written. For a long time, studies have been carried out on the realistic representation, simulation, or transcription in written text. And I'm thinking about novels, drama, film scripts, or how syntax and typography could show discontinuity on the verbal flow. The Dadaist movement in the 20s and the lettrists during and after the World War II advocated a return to fundamentals, I mean phonemes, experimenting with different means of expression in which graphics and sounds has an essential role. Today, new hybrid forms of communication force us to rethink the oral nature of our interaction and challenge the ideology of literacy and the power ascribed to it. I am here referring to emails, SMS, chat, blogs, tweets, and interactive games in which peak speech and different spellings, emoticons, avatars, acronym, abbreviation, punctuation, capital letters, interjection, and so on are used in an expressive, deictic, emblematic way. Languages online or computer-mediated communication are new vernacular practice. The online world has effect on our natural languages, how we identify ourselves, how we make assumptions. A new analogy can be drawn between physical, nonverbal gesture and the textual convention of new and social media. Digital and social media text are conversational text, too often understood and approached as disembodied. The text-based computer-mediated communication is a written oral hybrid where emotions, thought, and social conditions are intimately bound. We are witnesses the closing of the Gutenberg parenthesis. We cannot exclude from this change the fact that literature itself is changing, from cyber literature to art installation, combining design and literary text. Poetry can also be staged as an oral performance, slams and rap, as a public lecture, or as a visual display. Ketai Shuseshu is now the name in Japan for novels in SMS writing, delivered and serialized on mobile phone, and published as serials in newspapers, as were certain novels in France during the 19th century. What about translation and interpretation in this moving landscape from the graphosphere to videosphere? There are a number of practices that blur the traditional opposition between the oral and the written. To name a few, translating theater, comics, songs, opera, where several types of sign coexist. Localizing video games, live subtitling, interlingual subtitling. Some tools also disturb the border between oral and written, that is, speech recognition software. In other words, speaking what will become a written text. Text as renewed through ICT has become polysemiotic or multimodal. 2 decades with the internet and the web have transformed a concept that has been dominant for more than 1,000 years. We now have text made of short messages, blogs, tweets, or still and moving images, sound, pictogram, tables, playing with different colors and fonts. Texts are now, from now on, fluent and fluid, with overtext and over-semiotic signs. With the net, we have a permanent process of actualization, updating, and at the same time, not finiteness of content. In a way, hypertext recreate the ambiguities of medieval manuscripts. It was not always easy to differentiate between author and copyist, between original knowledge and commentaries. In addition, today, the same text can also be multimedia. For example, a press article with photo can be transferred from a newspaper to a website or a smartphone. The relationship between the verbal and oversemiotic modes of communication was asymmetric for instance, Roland Barthes, who postulated the domination of verbal text over semiotic codes. Today, scholars in multimodal studies, such as Chris and Van Leeuwen, highlight the primacy and autonomy of visual signs. The question here is not to tell who is right, but to observe that both trends point to the importance of considering multiple modes of representation in tandem. Verbal forms no longer constitute the only way of producing meaning. Monomodality cannot be approached to text, even for certain literary writings. Similarly, translation cannot be rooted exclusively in the written verbal text. In interpreting studies, we now acknowledge the weight of nonverbal features of multilingual communication. For instance, 8 quality criteria have been defined for spoken media interpreting: comprehensibility, synchronicity, complete information, smooth delivery, appropriate facial expression, standard signing, elegance, and dress code. With all the changes implied by ICT, including the multimodal text, we can notice today a multiplication of labels created for translation. This outbreak of indenominations has not yet occurred in all society and in all languages. We are thinking of the labels imposed from within diverse professional milieux by sponsors and commissioners of translation, all the while denying the word itself and opting instead for localization, adaptation, multilingual documentation, editing, trans-editing, multilingual technical writing, language mediation, versioning, revision, co-writing, transcreation. How should we understand the situation and also the new hierarchy behind those labels? The term translation, as I said earlier, is rejected because it implies a formal transfer, a word-for-word work, in parallel with communication seen as a unidirectional conduit and an ethics of neutrality. Translation studies has deconstructed for some time now this definition and this image. And nowadays we deal with a concept of translation that recovers creativity, voice, interpretation, commitment. On one hand, the more conventional conceptualization of translation that has endured for centuries through the paradigm of equivalence has evolved into one more oriented toward the public or audience targeted. I mean the paradigm of the cultural turn. It exists in concurrence with another changing paradigm, one which reflects the platform and mediums through which the activity of translation is now carried out. In this sense, the paradigm of the book, upon which the paradigm of equivalence was based, transformed into one of the digital and web, where the text to translate becomes multimodal. This rapidly changing context can explain the proliferation of terms used to designate what once was translation. Translation has become a scalar concept which covers a wide variety of practice. The double clash of paradigms, from the equivalence paradigm to the paradigm of cultural turn, and from the traditional based on religious texts and printed matters to digital cultures, is happening now. Hence, the hesitation in denominating what we do when we translate, or transcreate, or transedit, or localize. What to take in from the presentation? I had 3 questions at the start which justified the 3-step move on my text. ICT, or the internet, at first aroused enthusiasm, even utopia, and then hard criticism. It is time now to bring their precise capacity to light, especially what they can do and under which conditions, and to what extent they affect our view, our relationship, our values. Translation and translation study realize today that they have been transformed and are still transformed thanks to digital technology. Such technology is more and more prevalent in different areas of academia and underscores the limits of what is graspable by a single scholar. Thus, the necessity of collaborative and interdisciplinary projects. 2, the traditional division between producing and consuming, providing and disseminating, writing and reading, and more blur by ICT. 3, in that technical complex landscape, text is becoming multimodal, a hybrid composition, a different semiotic sign, requiring new skills and new forms of literacy. Lévi-Strauss, in 1956, has defined 3 forms of humanism: of the Renaissance, with rediscovery of the text of classical antiquity; exotic, for the 18th and 19th century, with the knowledge from the Orient and Far East; and what he called the 3rd form, democratic, in the 20th century, including the totality of human cultures, where anthropologists, of course, play a key role. Each form, and I think this is very interesting, each form was concomitant with a certain new technical development, respectively astrolabe, railways, and cinema. We could add to this trilogy a 4th form, and you know it, digital humanism, where everything becomes unstable and can be translated into digital codes, knowledge as well as dating, business as well as services. Such a digital humanism is a convergence between our cultural heritage and a technology that is producing a new social sphere. This convergence redistributes concepts, categories, objects, and behavior in a new environment. In this perspective, does power remain equivalent to the traditionally dominating force to monopolize, control, or rule? Or does it become, as suggested by Michel Foucault in 1977, a strategy functioning in a network of relations? Technology is also changing the balance of powers between all the agents of the internet. Thank you.
So thank you very much for such an extensive presentation that has touched upon such sensitive issues that arise in translation as a discipline, as a profession, and that makes us even think more about what is happening. So really, we started thinking about visibility, invisibility of translation as such, desire and denial at the same time. So I would like to ask the audience if you have any questions or comments that would initiate those short but still discussion. Okay, I see the audience is still a bit like silent. Well, I would like to ask, so how to deal with such a situation when at the same time we as translators become desired and denied, when we are visible, invisible? I know this is a very, how to say, long question to be discussed, but still this is very much important for us because we train translators, localizers, and we in a way fight with the situation and context that is happening. And another side of the question would be how to deal then with technologies that make translation accessible and at the same time denies it because of crowdsourcing, fans dubbing, translation, fans titling, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
I think there are 2 levels. The questions you can answer on the professional level, practical level, or you can answer on a translation study level, more theoretical. But on both sides, at both levels, I think we are in trouble today. I mean, it's not bad. We are in trouble, meaning that we are through some kind of changes, and we have to face it. One problem is that we still train people with the old paradigm, when the same people are facing new paradigms. And how to change that, it's very difficult. It depends on the teachers, it depends on the institution, it depends on the situation. I cannot say that what we have been doing in Turku that should be applied automatically in the same way in Kaunas. And meaning that here the role of some individuals can be very important to bring the changes. But I must say there are resistance by professional translators who denied that amateurs do translate, and I think that's not the best policy. And some teachers believe that you translate a text and you should continue as you have done for the last 20 years. I think the change is there, and I think it's a challenge. First of all, you have to understand how the change is going on and what are the parameters of the changes. I must say, when I started to train people in the 70s, and when I look back, I say, my God, a lot of things have changed, and I'm not so sure that what we are doing today is relevant. But still, we are working. And I think one is, oops, I have to get out from the mic, but no. But one thing which is very challenging, and I think very nice, is also that the change can occur together, if we are working together, students and teachers, professional and amateurs. And I think we have to organize a dialogue with amateurs. I am not the kind of guy who will say amateurs do not translate. They do translate. They do a lot of work. And you like it or not, that's something else. You criticize the quality, that's something else. But they are there. The question is, how far can we be more professional than they are, and why do we need professional? And I think this is another challenge too. We never talk about professionalism of translators until recently. Now we start about professionalism of translator. And I am convinced we need both. Because, this is a very interesting thing. The technology has increased the volume of translation. And the community of professional translators cannot face and do all the work. It's impossible. We cannot translate everything. So there will be some kind of selection, in a way, that amateurs will do certain translation. And now the question is, how do we define professionalism of translators? And why do we need them? And why they are so important? I think there are still texts, if I dare to use the term text now, there are still texts which have to be done by professionals. And it doesn't mean that all have to be done by the same type of people. So I think the diversity is so large that I think we can embark all together in the changes. But we have to dialogue, to organize a dialogue and think about the changes. And I think this does not exist yet. Now we have some kind of, how should I say, clear opposition. Amateurs there, professionals there, and very difficult. It's the same at university. And you know that. Some university, they think that translation is still going on as it used to be in the 50s and deny what's going on today. And I think we know that there are resistance, but we have to adapt and go over this kind of resistance. But I am very optimistic. I'm very optimistic because technology is there, and the new generation are able to use this, and they will push away people who do not want to change. When I say changes, it does not mean you have to adapt everything. I don't think you have to say yes to every technology. I did not mean that. And that's why I started my speech by a critical view on technology. I think we have to keep a very critical eye on the technology. And I think the new generation is not critical enough. That was my point. The old generation should be critical about what they are doing, but the new generation should be critical about what they behave today. All right?
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? One question. Yes, we do have. Just a minute.
My name is Pirjo Kukkonen. I think we, in semiotics, have a very big task and challenge to study all these relations. And And because semiotics is about communication and translation is about communication, so I think semiotics can do very much here to study all these changes and challenges in our life and humanities. In humanities, Dario.
No, I agree with you, Pirjo. I think, as I said, the new generation should dialogue with the old one. Professionals should dialogue with amateurs. I think disciplines, and I mentioned this, we have to get in the kind of dialogue. But now I realize in the last few years that transdisciplinarity, and you talk about transdisciplinarity yesterday, it's a very difficult matter. Very difficult. A lot of people talk about it, but when you come to discuss what it means, what are the implications, how can we use the concept of different disciplines together, then it's a very difficult task. And I agree with you, that's why I'm here, and that's why I happily accept your invitation, because I come from translation study, and I want to learn a little bit more from semiotics, and hopefully we can share something. But definitely, I don't pretend that one discipline can explain the changes today. We need to cooperate in that. But my question will be, do you believe that universities in general are ready to come to interdisciplinarity?
I guess we have a question for you.
I couldn't hear your question. What did you ask exactly?
My question is, do you believe that at university today, or universities today, are willing to develop the kind of interdisciplinarity we are searching for?
I believe in this interdisciplinary, the dialogue and polylogy between the various disciplines. But we have to go to the society also, so look at the profession in society, and it needs very much dialogue.
You see, I said I'm very optimistic, but I'm a little bit pessimistic about institutions. And universities are really very much reluctant to organize, at least in humanities. Not maybe in hard sciences and technology, but in humanities, it's very difficult to organize interdisciplinarity. And we have very strict borders, still today.
It needs creativity.
Oh, well.
I think we will do it at the universities.
Okay.
Thank you very much for raising the discussion. And I guess that Dario also has one question.
Thank you very much, Professor Gambier, for your beautiful presentation, and sorry for having attended it in part-time. But anyway, you raised a number of very important questions that exactly we try to address in this platform. First of all, the fact that you point out it very clearly how humanities can take the role of critically assessing technologies. This is exactly one of the main things that we try to do. It's not a question of, to use a slogan that we use always in the Institute, it's not a question of going backwards or forward, it's a question of going towards. So thank you very much for that. Thank you also very much for saying that in the end we are always, as we say in Italy, filling our mouth with this word interdisciplinary, multidisciplinarity, but very few of us do it seriously. We like to add that to our applications, to our articles, and so on, but to do it seriously is another matter. And this is yet another important thing that particularly from the humanistic side we need to do and think about carefully. Yeah. And I totally agree with you that institutions, again, they like to promote themselves as interdisciplinary environments, but they do very few from the strictly institutional point of view to do that. The case of Lithuania is paradigmatic. We are invited to have interdisciplinarity as one of our priorities, yet the institutions put a lot of cages for that. And it's very difficult to, for instance, create a doctoral program that jumps from one area to another because we are not allowed. Yes. So we have to be creative, that's true. But we also need to really change the foundations of this dialogue, which in fact is not a dialogue but a conflict. So thank you very much for these things. If I just may ask you when the discussion is over, I don't want to interrupt it now, but I have a couple of practical information to deliver. So let's continue the discussion and then I will, don't leave the room yet. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I will follow up of what you are saying. We talk about academic institution. Where I am also a little bit pessimistic is about EU institutions. They don't provide money for research in humanities. Mainly it's hard sciences and medicine. And that's a very difficult point now to push. We have tried to apply like you did and you are doing. It's very difficult. For instance, I'll give you one example. The last Marie Curie programs, 120 projects were accepted. That was 2 weeks ago. Only 3 from humanities. And one of them is about multimedia. It's more or less technology than humanities. And the other one was about language disorder. And the third one was about museum. So I realize it's more and more difficult, and no translation, no multilingualism, no language diversity, nothing in all this project. So institutionally, we have to work hard.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions, ideas, comments?
My name is Andréane Kiki from Paris 8. I have thank you for your talk.
Yeah,
I have one question on the term versioning that you mentioned. And I was wondering if, because I've encountered this term in literary critical, and I was wondering if it had the same significance, that is rewriting, but at the same time altering or dubbing the original. Is it used in the same way in version? And that's it? Okay, so that means that the literary criticism has appropriate, no? Okay, versioning, okay. Okay, I see. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for some clarifications. Do we have any other questions, comments? I guess that we will be able to continue the discussion and debate about what's happening in translation and translation studies during the coffee break, and of course the extensive days when second edition of ICON goes on. And once again, I would like to deeply thank you, Professor Yves Gambier, for coming and for the honor of seeing you here at Kaunas University of Technology, the Faculty of Social Sciences, Arts and Humanities, and still for making us optimistic despite the fact what is going on. Thank you very much for your plenary session, and let's see you in discussion.
Thank you. Can I take...
Of these microphones, do you hear me? Yes, I guess. Thank you very much. I would like to thank our organizer and host, Dario Martinelli, for this honor to be a plenary speaker. This is my first plenary lecture. There was a prophecy 10 years ago by Professor Salomon Marcus, who was telling me in the corridors in Imatra, Christian, you should do a plenary lecture. I don't know why it was so early, this idea, but finally Salomon Marcus' prophecy has fulfilled. Okay, now I'm happy that my lecture will continue a bit the ideas of Professor Gambier, because we discuss more or less the same topics. Of course, my approach is a bit different, and I'm trying to see mostly the positive and constructive sides of the digital culture and the way semiotics can intervene in a substantial way and in a way open a profile of semiotic inquiry which could explore the intersection between semiotics and economy. We have many other fruitful intersections, and we have certain scholarship about semiotics and economy, but usually the approach is always critical. So if this morning the point was mostly to have the humanities as a tool for raising critical awareness of all these processes which are somehow dominating our culture and which are very much derived from the market and from the profit-based logics and interests. Now I will try just to see if we can say something about how money works anyway, without any position against or for. So it's a more technical approach. Now, to come to the idea of digital grammatology, I passed some phases of the development of ideas, but this was one observation which made me start the inquiry, and it was how do we pay for this great privilege to have such an amazing tool, which is the search engine, which is doing a huge elaboration of data for free on our disposition. What is, how can exist such tool on our disposition for free, how we can use Google Earth for free and other platforms on the internet, which development costed for sure millions of dollars, and we have them for free. So obviously there should be some logic behind that. How do we pay for this? Because this is the this is definitely a new form of generation of economic value, which was unknown before the age of the internet. So my inquiry started from the point, can we use our semiotic know-how, our expertise in analyzing the meaning, the communication, the information processes, and to start to understand the new economy, which is much more semiotic than the economy from the industrial age, where material transaction was supposed to take place in order to have deals, in order to have economic activity. So this was a kind of challenging question to answer. So here is question and answer, but actually the bigger question is why so, and how we can go deeper into it. So the answer, how we can have such amazing tools as the search engines and Google Earth and so far, and not paying, this is because these systems actually sell our profiles, our browsing dossiers, our consumers' predispositions. So we don't know. Many of us never question this thing. But if you want to know how do you pay for having such great services available for free, yes, you pay just being there, just performing some logical use of the search engine, just writing emails, which content is also analyzed, and the end of all this is that Google sells to companies a huge databases with consumers, with identities whose behavior corresponds to the offer of this company. So companies received a very targeted databases from Google, a real treasure if you want to address economic offers. So we pay without knowing even that we are paying, and this is kind of value, and this value is very intriguing how it takes place, because if we, I did this exercise to see in the Encyclopedia of Economy what should be the economic value, I saw a lot of theories there, a lot of concepts, and actually this is one of the basic, the question of the economic value in economy is the same as the question of the sign or the meaning in semiotics. This is the most basic question. So depending on the conception of what is economic value, there are various paradigms in economy. Actually, there were a lot of debates what should be the economic value. So I never saw in the even encyclopedias published in the recent years any hint about this new economy ways to produce value and to have interactions which are supported in this way. There are, as I mentioned you, some explorations in the notion of economy from the side of, let's say, philosophers and semioticians, and they were interesting to me, and probably I missed something. Of course, I put here only the big names. Then I happened to read secondary literature, a lot of secondary literature, but I would say I have not seen anything different from the great insights of the authors which will be listed. Now, not very much, but important things about the relation between economy and semiotics has been said by Peirce, Saussure, Eco, and Derrida. Peirce, as you know, he has said something about everything. I don't know any question which Peirce has not treated, and very often saying one thing and the opposite of it at the same time in various years in different ways, but always interesting. So what was the economy topic in Peirce was the economy of scientific research. So he was using some economic paradigms to reflect on when the scientific inquiry should stop and when your efforts to understand the truths about the surrounding reality should stop and the result is not counterproductive. Anyway, economy of the scientific inquiry, something like that is his Saussure. He has another big intuition about the similarity between the linguistic system and the possibility to analyze language in a synchronic and a diachronic way. And he said, if you see economy, which is also a social science as linguistics, they have the same thing. They have the diachronical analysis, how evolve economic systems, but they have the market, which is the synchronic cut of the values in a given moment. So he spends, it's a luxury for Saussure, an entire page to speak about it, because you know, he has so seminal ideas in one book, and for economy he spends almost one page to describe the similarity. Big intuition, but as we will see later, it is related to a particular type of economy, which is not very usable today. Eco has an important contribution in theory of semiotics about economy, he spends a chapter, a small chapter, to show that every social phenomena, any cultural phenomena in a given society is semiotic phenomena. So he, of course, starts from the language, which is obviously semiotic and phenomenon that needs no explanation, but then he says, okay, also the production of tools is a semiotic phenomena, the exchange of goods is semiotic phenomena, and the exchange of women is semiotic phenomena, which is the kinship, the structure of the kinship. Okay, for his analysis of how the exchange of goods is a semiotic phenomena, he uses a very simple Marxian notion of value, of economic value, and definitely when he speaks about money, for instance, he still speaks about gold and coin, which is somehow anachronic because we have paper money and especially electronic money since '59. So paper money is still 17th century and electronic money is 59. So he was writing this in the 70s, and already he was referring to the money as coin, as a metal. So I would say this analysis was not very useful to understand the new. Okay, Derrida likes money. This is a joke in style of Derrida. Why Derrida likes money? Derrida likes money because the money are example of a sign without a vocal, without a phonographic equivalent. It's a sign, a trace, a writing, pure writing, without the necessity of pronouncing, without a voice. So, as you know, he was very, critical to language, because language was dominated by the phonological centrism, phonocentrism, and this was, according to him, a big error of the whole Western thought. So he was analyzing any other writing system. I don't know if you know this detail, but his PhD was in mathematics, because mathematics, the language of mathematics, is another writing system which does not necessitate phonological replication in order to work as language does. So it was pure writing. And money also. I don't know for his economical appetites, but definitely the meaning here is that he likes the science, the money as a science. Okay, Foucault and Baudrillard, they have something more about economy. Foucault was studying the paradigms which were dominating any scientific discourse, and of course economy was one of the important exercises of scientific discourse during the centuries. So he was analyzing how economic theories from the mercantilist times and from the classical age reflect one certain paradigm of the lists of the separate units of the clear definition, and how, for instance, in the next stage during the Romantic period, or whatever he calls it, then came into economics for all theoreticians who were doing economics, the organic metaphor, the organic episteme. So economy was seen as an organism and all its elements interacting, and so on and so forth. So this is an interesting perspective, but still we cannot get it ready-made to understand the present phenomena. Baudrillard was extremely ideological. He wrote a lot about the economy of sign, but his major idea was that consumer society transforms consumption into symbolic activity, and we substitute our relation with the real surrounding, with the real goods, with the real forms of consumption, with some kind of simulacrum to which we attribute ideological, is the way the ideology works, substituting the real utility and the user value of goods with their symbolic value, with their social uses, with the fact that we need, on a level of identity and like a psyche, to cure our social needs with this kind of placebo, which is the consumption. Of course, a lot more, but all criticizing the hidden use of the economical value as symbolic value. And the two thinkers who wrote really a lot about and almost dedicated their entire contribution, Simo is considered that his book on the philosophy of money is probably his major work, and Rossi Landi, who is among semioticians the one who analyzed economical processes very well. Okay, both of them developed the Marxian idea, which definitely had a big contribution. It was a big advancement to understand economy, to understand better, to understand why society corresponds rather to economical logic than to other more superficial ideas, what is important, what is not. But then semiotics was used as, or sociology, this philosophical analysis, as raising the critical awareness and understanding why we should not, how to say, enact what the logic of the economical exchange dictate us to do. So they are very important authors, still in a paradigm which is difficult to be applied in understanding the present day phenomena. Now, an important insight after I started to work with the economical issue is that the money, the role of money in our social relations was very much related to the writing system through which they were put into circulation, which somehow transferred the interest from the typically semiotic inquiry to the grammatology, because grammatology is supposed to be the discipline which studies the various writing systems. So grammatology and semiotics has a lot in common because of Derrida and of his particular position what should be grammatology and his philosophical use of grammatology. Actually, these two discourses went in quite different directions. Still, there is a constructive grammatology not related with Derrida, which studies the impact of writing systems on society, on economy, and law, and other social institutions. So for me, the way to understand better the contemporary metamorphosis of the economic value should take something from the grammatology, this constructive grammatology, not the deconstruction, but the grammatology which studies with even positive approach and with positive models the impact of writing systems. And what best example, okay, this is how one of the, let's say, most interested in the relation between semiotics and grammatology authors, which is Winfried Knott, in his handbook, put some typology of the relation between speech and writing, and this is just an example. When it comes to speak about paradigms which put the writing as more important than speech, then he entirely based his analysis on Derrida. Nevertheless, this is a very good scheme which shows graphics and phonological expression of language. There are various types of relation. Just an example that it exists as a typology, but it has not been developed further. And of course, if any feedback is welcome, because this is the very initial phase of this inquiry. So, what best example to understand why grammatology is relevant for understanding the economical value, and it is more suitable for as an approach than taking the semiotic models dominated usually by the language as a phonological activity. This is abstraction to show that money, we probably consider them only as something rather superficial, but I come to authors which see the origin of writing, the origin of human writing, into deriving from the necessity of describing economic value. There are, and here the author writes that there are archaeological evidence that the first writings of humans were to designate, to signify money or cattle or economic value. So if we develop this line of thought, could be interesting to probably see with another, in another way, with another eyes, the whole picture of is it writing something secondary to the verbal expression of language, or on the contrary, writing originated in a different logic, and actually the money as a writing system has a fundamental role in organizing society, which is not that much dependent. I don't say it is more important than language, but it's not so derivative and so secondary. So the idea goes in the direction that writing is very important, it's independent, and the economic discourse, the economic phenomena, is one of the demonstration of how this writing system can transform entirely the society. Okay, this is now an ultra short history of money, just to follow the relation between value and medium, which the various forms of money, how they evolved. This was also another important thing. Okay. Before money, they say human societies emerged with the separation of labor, the division of labor. When someone started to produce things, he was better than the others, and then there was exchange. The first forms of exchange which were not intermediated through any money intermediation, and in civilization there are few of the big actually there were few of the big civilizations which were not using money, and okay, there are another theories how this can happen, but it's much more likely that money emerged after this system of barter cannot correspond anymore to the dynamics of the production. Anyway, before money there was the barter, the natural exchange of the goods with certain value. Then the first registered, let's say, simulation of money, usually those were goods which were very requested, and their possession was guaranteed that in any time you can exchange this good for the correspondent value. So cattle was among the first forms of money. Just if the logic of your activity and a relation was to accumulate money, you accumulate cattle. This was the universal way then to be able in any moment to capitalize this accumulation. And money are always about how to be able to keep more and more. So cattle was not very, let's say, easy way to be rich. And you see, it was starting from 9,000 years before Christ. After money, another well spread, of course, there are various forms. The book about the history of money, one of them is about 700 pages, and you have huge variety of forms of payment, but those are the, let's say, millstones. Cowries are kind of shells, cowrie shells, which are typical with a long endurance. If you, okay, here is a very low resolution image, but they are good looking shells who endure in time. And they were used in many parts of the world, not only in China or in one area, but in many different parts as a money, as sign for the economic value. Then came the age to metals, just pieces of metal because they last more than other materials, and they were just pieces of metal, but this already started to be a premise to accumulate richness. And this is very important because actually there are analyses of the history of humankind with the relation between money and warfare. And obviously warfare, serious warfare, warfare with big impact on society started only after there were mediums for the economic value, money, which were enough to be accumulated and to motivate an army to be gathered and to go and to take them. So these two things are quite related, and they're directly dependent on the medium through which money are exchanged in society. Okay, then came the really the most successful probably form of economic value in all cultures, which was the coin. There were coins also before 687, but they were proto-coins without the image of the ruler, who is the guarant. The real coins, they were invented, so to say, in Mykenæ, at least it's written in Greece, and actually this was a huge success because all rulers started to adopt this system, the bimetal system. You have golden and silver coins and many other varieties, but actually the coin became a huge success, and real warfare probably started after the invention of the coins, after the spread of coins, and after the possibility already to have really a big amount of economic value concentrated in one place through this semiotical process, because even in this way there is not a big level of arbitrariness, because gold is also a good, gold also is measured. So various theories about the economic value were looking for the value, for instance, in the gold, and they were thinking that the more gold you have, the more economic value there can be. And this is because of the coin, because the medium was valuable in itself. Then this was the mercantilist theory. Then the real economy started when Adam Smith, but before him some other authors had the intuition, but Adam Smith for the first time described the economic value as a result of work, as a result of creation of utility through systematic transformation of the resources into utility, and this changed the whole economic paradigm and put the basis of the economical science, because the mercantilists before him, they thought that the value, the richness, the wealth of nations was in the money, it was in the gold, and somehow, but actually this was quite exaggerated position. So with the coin, we have a big advancement into also the development of the society, the warfare, the way a ruler can pay to army. So it provoked a huge social mobility. And by the way, Zimmel's book is very enlightening in this direction. He's just analyzing the sources of value and how the money, and especially the paper money, how they transform and make this more anonymous. Now, the banknotes. The banknotes came very late in the 17th century. In the Bank of Sweden, by the way, was the first one to put in circulation paper money, which had far earlier there was paper money in China, but the way they were distributed and managed was quite far from the modern use of banknotes, whereas this first really notes from the bank, which was guaranteeing the value that you possess, they started to be very soon used by many banks, and they spread, and actually they were, this change is great. This is the biggest advancement, let's say, in the direction of how the money transform and their role in economy. Because with the gold, you still have a material medium, a material sign, something which has value in itself. So it was very complicated to understand where the wealth is originated. But with the paper money, you have purely arbitrary sign. The state can produce as many as can guarantee, or even more, and provoke inflation. But there was not anymore the idea that the vehicle, the carrier of the money, of the economic value, was itself valuable. But just this shift actually gives the beginning of the contemporary banking system. But we know that nowadays even the cash, the paper money, are too much and somehow are limited in the way to enact payments. We, for instance, cannot enact payments a long distance. We need banks, we need other tools. Whereas with the credit card, one more barrier is overcome. And actually what is interesting to us and bring us to the present situation, this is the so-called digital money. And in digital money we have a big variety of forms, but most of them, those which are important to us, are digital money which one can get in possession, other can lose. They are very flexible, but at the end what they call digital money is something which you can transform into real money, whereas there is the virtual money, which is something different. This is forms of payment within video games, within other online activities, which are not directly related to the real systems of payment offline, let's say. But digital money is one step further. With the digital credit cards, you don't have even the plastic support. You have just a number, and with this number you can do real payment. So here, according to me, we have another jump, another leap in the exchange of economic value, which reflects something typical for, and something which probably as a writing system has determined particular ways of exchange and gives the shape of the present day economy. So this is more or less the logic of the arbitrariness between value and medium. We have only after the introduction of banknotes a big level of arbitrariness. Still today, with the new forms of payment, we are really on a level which already the model of signifier and signified somehow does not fit quite well. Now, let's see what might be the digital grammatology through which this phenomena can be examined. I have some quotations for a book. I will tell you which one is the book, but I will be very happy if someone recognizes who is the author of this statement. Now, software, it's equal to digital writing. Software has become our interface to the world, to others, to our memory and our imagination, a universal language through which the world speaks, and a universal engine on which the world runs. What electricity and combustion engine were to the early 20th century, software is to the early 21st century. It's not only a quiz, if you know who is the author of this word, but would you agree with such a strong statement? So, who? No. It's different author. Okay, let's see another strong statement. Again, we are now trying to understand what should be a digital grammatology, or the writing side of digital culture. digital culture seen as a new form of writing systems. Practically all communication techniques developed by humans until the 90s are now routinely combined. Thus, almost all of the previously separate semiotic resources became option within the user's palette. Linguistic, kinetic, spatial, iconic, diagrammatic, and temporal intelligence can now work together to express what we already knew but could not communicate, as well as generate new messages and experiences whose meaning we have yet to discover. Okay, strong words. Any idea who might be the author of this? There are very few semioticians from within digital and software studies, so he's one of them. A hint, I wanted very much to invite him in Sofia for the World Congress to be one of the plenary speakers, but he never answered. But it's not Linus Torvainen, it's not him. Okay. Digital code, digital visualization, geographical interface system, information retrieval, machine learning techniques, constantly increasing speed of processors and decreasing cost of storage, big data analytics technologies, social media, and other parts of the modern technological universe introduce new ways of acquiring knowledge and, in the process, redefine what knowledge is. Okay, strong words. Okay, and here is explanation why this kind of studies are a bit unfamiliar to people who has been trained into humanities. It is not accidental that all intellectuals who have most systematically written about software's role in society and culture have either programmed themselves or have been involved in cultural projects and practices which include writing and teaching software. He shows a list of authors who are really prove this statement, and German media, okay, this is the last one. German media and literature wrote that students today should know at least 2 software languages. Only then they will be able to say something about what culture is at the moment. Okay, this excludes many people of being really able to say relevant things. Okay, it's Lev Manovich, the author of these words, one of the few theoreticians of new media who had semiotic training, and he defines himself as a semiotician before he started to study digital media already in the 80s and in the 90s. So, according to Lev Manovich, let's see now, okay, those were kind of generalizations which I think were important to understand the range of influence and of presence of digital writing in our society. What, according to Lev Manovich, can be considered as digital writing. So here comes a list of activities which are, according to him, encompassing most of the activity which concern every one of us, and it's very difficult to stay outside these activities. Even someone consciously decides not to be too much involved with digital writing. Still, here we have a lot of variation. Creating cultural artifacts, accessing, appending, sharing, and remixing such artifacts. Okay, the major accent of the book of Lev Manovich is the new artistic forms. But of course, these new artistic forms, they reflect the mainstream uses of the digital forms of writing. Sharing information and knowledge online. This happens to us every day. This is the book, Software Takes Command. Communicating with other people using email, instant message, voice over IP, online text and video. All these forms, they apparently are very useful and do not request from us any particular expertise or very little expertise to be able to do them, but at the same time, and this is the meaning of the book of Manovic, they introduce us into the logic of the digital information, which is different from the logic of the typewriting machine or the logic of the live communication and any other form. Although they seems to be quite continuous with what has been before, actually, gradually, and with their omnipresence in a subtle way, they introduce us into the digital culture. So after a certain period of time, we write emails, we write articles, we write our writings on the computer and so on. This logic, the logic of the new media, the logic of relation with the information and knowledge transforms us. So the writing systems the new writing system go back and transform the whole notion of knowledge. Of course, it's a question also of generations and in a various level in the various people, but let's be aware how far this new digital communication systems are involving us, engaging in interactive cultural experiences. Playing a computer game is one of the many such. Participating in online information ecology by expressing preferences, liking, and so on. There are many forms of doing our social activity online. Developing software tools, okay, this comes quite close to the... Now, can semiotics help? I really also, reflecting my institutional positions, I would be very keen on finding a role in semiotics in this scenario without by no way claiming that this is the only purpose of semiotics. Absolutely not. But one branch of it should go into this, let's say, new forms of knowledge and of communication studies, which now are taking shape and which are attracting people in the universities and which can transform semiotics not only in a critical discipline but also in something more closer to what nowadays those who make academic policy would like to see us. Of course, our critical romantic past will always be there, and nothing prevents semiotics from being a philosophical, critical approach, but still, I think we need to think of paradigms. Peirce and Saussure do not work. This is something I stand behind this, because too much semiotics has been done just like a Peircean hermeneutics or proving how right was Saussure and how his model are eternal and so on. I don't think if we keep very much the orthodoxy of semiotics, this will Saussure example with economic value is really a very good insight, but it reflects the industrial economy, the economy of the exchange, the economy which, like his linguistic sign, presuppose correspondence and transaction, whereas present-day economy is the economy of access, the economy of the service, the economy of processes which take place, and it's very difficult to... Peirce, of course, had great contributions, but as I said, it's Umberto Eco who's struggling with Peirce, and now I'll see what means. This is just an example what means that Umberto Eco struggles with Peirce. If you see how much effort puts Umberto Eco in deriving, let's say, rational model of Peirce. And of course, this model of Umberto Eco is totally unusable because it is so complicated that it is not good for teaching students with it. It's not good to make analysis of it because it contains everything. But still, Eco was probably the only one, and that's why Persian scholars does not like him, because he was kind of trying to anyway extract from Peirce something useful. This is another struggle of Umberto Eco to transform Peirce into a model for textual analysis. Both the sign of Eco and the analysis of textual model are based on the inferential model of sign, which I think is the of course, only in 1997 Eco acknowledges that, okay, it's well known, we can make Peirce say, okay, I missed the word, say anything you want according to how you approach him. So let's do not take Peirce too seriously, because definitely it's very rich of ideas. We can take a lot of advantage, but still anything which said with the alibi that Peirce has said it is relative, because he was saying in such a way, his style is such that you can attribute to him any thought. But notions which Eco introduces, as encyclopedia, statistical constancy, and the application of these notions to the internet are really, I think this is the deep homology, much better than the homology which Rossi Landi was seeing between the language activity and the work, language as a work. If we compare Umberto Eco's model of encyclopedia, where the meanings are formed by the statistical constancy of repetition of certain usages, and our systems of expectations who were shaped by the statistical expectation, yes, this is something which I think goes very much in the direction of this the inferential model of sign and the invention of codes, another important one, the inferential model of text interpretation. In this, unfortunately, the time is not enough to go into the, to explain why the inferential model is much more relevant to this new digital reality, where we never know the code in advance, but when we speak about intuitive interfaces, actually we speak about any time when we are in front of an interface to infer and to make abductions about the principles, and then with the tries and errors and another tries to understand and to recreate the logic of the working and so on. So Eco's model to represent how do we interact with these new digital forms of writing, which are very suitable, but we never know in advance how will work. It's, I think, a direction for further. And okay, digital special effects. This we have to skip. This is very good special effect, but it's now an example to show how this digital grammatology, because also the special effects are a form of writing, is a vehicle of big economic value, because this industry has developed very much. Still, it changes our system of expectation from the sensory, from the culturally determined system of expectation. Special effects make us inhabit the possible world of the author through sensory motor system of expectation, and this is quite a tricky thing, which transforms narration into experience. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian, for this brilliant presentation. If there are any questions or comments? Yes, please.
Thank you for your overview. Especially, I would like to come back on the first part of the presentation about economy and writing systems. If I understood you correctly, you make a very strong correlation between economy and origin of writing systems. Mm-hmm. Okay. Today, on the planet, there are 6,000 language community, of which less than 1,000 have a writing system. Mm-hmm. do I have to infer from your presentation that 5,000 language communities do not have economics?
No, I don't think this was the point, but I'm sure that you can do without, actually this makes my point, because you can do without a writing system for transferring information, but I'm sure that most of these societies, they have money, which is the writing system of economy. So if you tell me that 5,000 societies, types of societies does not have money, this I will not believe.
No, but I think you have to define in your presentation, you have to specify exactly what kind of economy you are referring to. Because not all economic systems create value.
This is already strange.
You can have exchange, a truck exchange, but you don't create value.
Always, when you have exchange, value is presupposed, because this exteriorize the result of labor. So if you have exchange, there is value. This even Marx was enough, and you have various systems to intermediate the economic value, and I'm sure, and actually this is the point, that the systems which were designating value and which were the proto-writing systems deriving from the necessity humans to facilitate their exchange to write economic value, I think this was previous to language and somehow primordial. But it's not my thought. I quote the author, which states this, who is more expert than me in the history of money.
Okay, if you don't mind, I would like to give you two references about writing system and orality, because I think this is quite important. We tend to be blind with our system because we are belonging to a writing system society, okay? But I will refer to Jackie Goody and Marcel Josse, two anthropologists who have been studying the importance of orality and oral society. And maybe you could get some inspiration.
Okay, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very exciting for original humanists to hear a lecture about economy. But you said that these old Semiticians are not able to deal with this contemporary world or digitalized, etc. Saussure. So what do you think about Saussure's theory of the value of linguistic sign, when he says that value of any sign in language is depending totally on its position in a certain system, whether it's so that no sign as such has a value, but only as a certain position in the... Don't you think that this Saussurean theory became generalized to the whole society, media society, so that the only values which exist are just these which are very flexible and depending on the whole system of our thought?
The point with Saussure is the following, that his conception of the value based on the difference, the unique position in a system, is static, and actually it was very good intuition to reflect the industrial economy way of exchange of value and money, where you have transaction, money, and you get good, and once this transaction takes place, everything ends. Nowadays economy, the digital economy, is far more oriented to access, to pay for access to services, to experiences, to have a long-term relation between provider and consumer, which does not finish with the interaction, with the exchange, with the one-time exchange. That's why the whole paradigm of Saussure it's difficult to grasp this process, and actually Professor Gambier today mentioned that translation becomes much more process rather than comparison. So I saw immediately something similar to the idea of economic exchange before, during the industrial age, when it was a one-time action to buy something, and nowadays when we, for instance, we buy car, but actually we take the money from the bank, pay to the car company, and then we pay to the bank, and we have the car, but we have paid access because we don't have the possession over the car, and we gain this possession during the time. And then there are a big variety of schemes through which we acquire the property gradually in time. And so we don't not buy nowadays car, but we buy access to a new car, which we use not being its owner. So this process-like forms of payment and relation type commitment with loyalty and so on, which today are requested to have a business, are very difficult to conceptualize with a stable system basing the value on the static difference from the other elements in the system.
I think that in the end you touch one problem, that is the role of dreams, or maybe simulacra, or maybe avatars. How can you explain it is, as a semantician, now the role of fantasy and the search for the absolute among humans?
The search for the absolute, the avatar example, if you mean this, and the dream society. There is a book about the new economy as a dream society where you buy access to fantasies, to experiences, to creations which are not material, but you just get access to them, and most of our free time goes more and more spent for living in a fictional worlds, whatever economic activity today you consume. It's rather staged as experience, even if you analyze how advertising, according to Baudrillard, sells us dreams, sells us false reality, bring us, alienate us from our own needs, and so on and so far. But we are one step further of this dream. I think the experience, the notion of experience and paying for access to experience now is the major way to interact with the market. So
thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the talk, Christian. I found this very, very interesting and horizon opening in many regards. I would like to ask you, you have shown how arbitrariness increases along the history of money, from cattle to digital money. There's a ongoing increase of arbitrariness. Well, I would like to put that to the test, bringing in some Persian notions. I'd rather see in that continuous evolution of may we call them signifiers for value, for economical value, a continuity of similarity. To get the point, for instance, the icon index symbol Persian triad is developed among a continuity of similarity, and as such, the symbol evokes fiction as real possibility. It is my question comes quite in a good context, following up the previous question on dreams. To get to my point, sorry for talking so long, may we please look again at your final slide? The one with the science fiction example. Yeah, thank you very much. Well, the authors you refer to here describe this as totally alien, as the digital world where visual effects are possible and so on evokes something totally alien. Well, I disagree. I think it all the more shows how digital culture is capable of representing real possibilities. What we're seeing over here, their example, to me is not totally alien at all. I can recognize so many elements because they are directly iconic to my real phenomenal world. I can recognize a face, eyes, nose, mouth, and so on. I think digital money is not necessarily arbitrary following on the same argument. I would like to see your answer to this. Thank you.
Okay, arbitrariness is a very term umbrella, as Umberto Eco says. It can mean many things. Now, when we speak about the digital money are more arbitrary, this does not mean necessarily that their value is easily, you can lose it or gain it without any logic of the market. On the contrary, I give an example as this special effects writing that actually there was arbitrariness of the possible world when in a literary story your imagination is requested to reproduce with your own encyclopedic competence the guidelines of the author, but the author was not providing you with the experience. He provides you with socially shaped words, socially expression forms which are social, and then it was a big part of your own imagination to work in order to reconstruct the possible world of the author. This used to be with the conventional means of communication, but with the special effect we have a new form of writing which almost requests actually far less arbitrariness, because everything is already given. You're a consumer of experience, not interpreter of text. From this I agree totally with you that we recognize things, and actually the arbitrariness with this form of expression is far less. But here the economic value is not to prove the arbitrariness with this image. On the contrary, it is to prove that the new forms of writing somehow are sold for much more money, that special effects transform cinema and narration into business, and it was the analysis of our system of expectations which provide us with the conditions of possibility to understand the text, that how they pass from a more cultural, arbitrary and codified and requesting effort to something which is easy to consume, which is accessible, which requests our sensory motor systems of expectation in order to transform the text into experience. So probably I would need more time to specify, but the idea was not that cinema with special effects brings more arbitrariness in level of interpretation, on the contrary.
Just one more question.
Christian, thank you very much for the presentation. I was wondering, I would say that the core of my question would be, wouldn't it be time we semiotized economy? I'd like to give two examples. The first one, I would mention the first question that was proposed here in the following sense. We can imagine that maybe 5/6 of mankind are completely alienated from the decisions of power of economy. Language is part of this strange pyramid in which they are alienated, they are forgotten, their voices are silenced in the centers of decision. So we can understand that there is an economy of symbols, a symbolic economy, which is prevailing. There is an economy of symbols that we should analyze as semioticians. Let's take a very plain example. When somebody buys an iPhone or a MacBook, okay, he pays for that. The person receives the money. Okay, but there are so many other values present here. He will live an experience as a Mac user. He will maybe become one of the supporters of the values which are inherent to the branding. So there is a whole experience of branding which is there. There are lots of intangible values which are not contemplated quantitatively in traditional economy. It seems to me that traditional economy is obsolete in the 21st century because it doesn't contemplate branding, because it doesn't contemplate the experience of consuming, because it does not contemplate the 5/6 of mankind, which he has mentioned over there. I'd like to hear you about that.
Yeah, thank you, Ricardo. Absolutely. What we can derive as a conclusion of this arbitrariness of the transfer of the economy, this brought to incredible polarization of the economic power between the few who are rich and who, thanks to this new, much more facilitated ways to accumulate money, because obviously how the logic of this evolution of the medium with money was to create more and more conditions for people to get rich. So now we have absurd these inequalities, and 7/8 of the world is cut from this just because it is not anymore related to anything tangible. It is quite virtual. And this Indignados, I think, movement is about exactly this, how small is our impact, the impact of the majority of people, but the people who make the real sector, the people who work, who generate value, to those who decide what would be the value of the economic value, those who dictate the overall value. This separation between the real sector and the financial sector is something frightening, and I think it has to do with this rise of the arbitrariness of the circulation of the medium of the two microphones.
Okay. So once again, I would like to thank Christian Banca for his presentation and you all for this very stimulating discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.